Today, we're jumping into a really beautiful ancient story that honestly speaks to something I think we all want at some point: a second chance. It's all about forgiveness, redemption, and this powerful idea that, it's really never too late to start over. I mean, come on, who hasn't felt that? That heavy feeling of being stuck with your past mistakes, just weighed down by regret? Well, our story today is about a man who was feeling exactly that until he found out about a special day that promised to do just what he dreamed of: wipe that slate completely clean. So let's get into it. Okay, so first up, a prisoner of the past. Our story starts with a man who is literally trapped by his own history. Let's meet him, Xiao Dezheng, who's living a life just haunted by his own choices. So this guy, Xiao Dazheng, he was a big shot, a really successful grain merchant. But his success, it was built on a terrible, terrible decision. See, during a famine, he hoarded grain to drive the prices sky high. He made a fortune while his community suffered. And then, well, then his life just crumbled. His family passed away, his wealth disappeared, and he was convinced it was punishment from the heavens. He ended up as this lonely old recluse, basically a ghost in his own town, just completely buried under the weight of his guilt. So that brings us to section 2, a day for a new beginning. Zhao was pretty sure he was going to die with this heavy burden, but one day, hope showed up in a pretty unexpected way. He overheard a conversation that was about to change absolutely everything. So there he is, hiding behind a tree, and he listens in as the town scholar talks about this special day called Tian She Ri. And this basically translates to Heaven's Pardon Day. The scholar explains it's like a cosmic reset button, one specific day when the gates of heaven swing open to forgive anyone who is truly, deeply sorry for what they've done. For a guy like Zhao, who felt like his slate was permanently stained with ink, hearing these words, wow, it must have been like a lightning bolt, a chance to start over. He probably thought that was completely impossible. This single moment right here is where his journey to redemption really kicks off. And that leads us to section 3, the rituals of renewal. Now, here's the thing. This celestial pardon wasn't some free pass. You couldn't just ask for it. It had to be earned. Zhao found out that to get this forgiveness, he had to go through a whole series of sincere preparations, both on the outside and, more importantly, on the inside. And boy, was he committed. First, he cleans his entire home, symbolically sweeping out all that old negativity to make room for something new. Then, he purifies his body, fasting, bathing in a cold stream, a physical act to represent a spiritual cleansing. He gets ready to collect the very first bucket of well water on the morning of the day, which is called pardon water. But the biggest step? He takes the last bit of money he has, money he'd literally saved for his own coffin, and uses it to buy rice and clothes for people in need. That's some serious commitment. So this brings us to the main event, section 4, an act of true redemption. When Heaven's Pardon Day finally came, Zhao didn't just go through the motions. You could tell his actions were coming from a place of real, deep internal change. Picture this. He's at the local temple, and it's probably full of people asking for good luck or more money or whatever. But not Zhao. He gets down on his knees, and with tears just streaming down his face, he confesses everything. He talks about his greed, the pain he caused, and he just begs for forgiveness. And as he's doing this, he feels it. That giant, heavy stone he's been carrying on his chest for decades finally starts to feel a little lighter. And this is where you can really see the transformation. The old Zhao, he was all about profit. He took from people who were desperate. But the new Zhao, he's inspired by compassion. He sees an old turtle at the market that's about to be killed, and without even thinking about it, he uses his very last coins to buy it and set it free. He's moved from a life of taking to a life of giving. His final act of charity that day might have been the most powerful of all. He takes the rice and clothes he bought to the town's beggars, the very people who only knew him as this bitter, stingy old man. Can you imagine the look on their faces? As he's handing out the supplies, yeah, the winter wind is biting at his hands. But for the first time in so long, he felt this genuine warmth spreading through his heart. So what happened? Did it all work? Well, this brings us to our final section. The spirit of forgiveness. Did Zhao get his celestial pardon? The story's end reveals that the real pardon was actually a lot closer to home. Back in his clean, simple home, Zhao makes a cup of tea with that pardon water he collected, and as he sips it, he notices something incredible. The chronic chest pain, the cough that had been with him for years, it started to fade. Now, was it magic water, or was it the psychological release of finally letting go of decades of guilt? Either way, he felt this lightness, this energy he hadn't felt since he was a young man. So what's the real lesson here? This is what I love. We can see how these ancient rituals translate so perfectly to modern life. Confession isn't just about pleasing some god. It's about the very real power of facing our own mistakes and letting that guilt go. Charity isn't just about good karma. It's literally practicing empathy. And reconciliation? Well, that's about fixing the broken connections in our own lives. And that's the heart of it all, isn't it? The true pardon didn't come from the sky. It came from within. The rituals of Heaven's Pardon Day were a roadmap that led Zhao to the one place he needed to go, forgiving himself. By taking real action to fix his wrongs and change who he was, he granted himself the pardon he was looking for. And he went on to live a long, happy life, not as the greedy merchant, but as a kind man who inspired his whole town. Zhao's story really suggests that we don't have to wait for a special day on the calendar. Any day that we choose to face our past, to practice compassion, and to finally forgive ourselves, that can be our own Heaven's Pardon Day. So the real question is, what will you do with yours?